And I think we're now ready to move into our final talk. So I'm just going to unshare. And Stefan, please, if you could take us away with the final talk, that would be brilliant.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Ștefan Istrate. I'm an AI research engineer, and today I'll be presenting SpeciesNet, which is a model that we've built for detecting species in camera trap images. This is work that I've done as an independent contractor through my own company, but it's pretty much part of a larger collaboration with Google, Wildlife Insights, and several NGOs in the biodiversity monitoring space. I'm sure this audience is already familiar with camera traps, but being motion-triggered cameras, they come with their own challenges when deployed in the field. Motion sensors can be extremely noisy in some situations. In a typical deployment, that can lead to up to 80% of the images not containing any animal at all. In the end, every single camera can produce tens of thousands of images. And generally, these are perfect conditions to think about using AI to speed up your workflow if you're someone that has to look at many of these images in your day-to-day job. Camera traps can be used for both presence and absence data, and some researchers may want to see all the pictures of a particular species, while some other researchers may want to make sure that a particular species is not present at all, for example, invasive species. So there are different trade-offs that any AI model has to make so that it can serve everyone. Also, cameras can collect multiple images for each single trigger, and eventually the annotations can become noisy. For example, if the annotations come at sequence level, like a couple of images receiving the same label, that can be a very noisy signal as well. So we've built SpeciesNet, but SpeciesNet in our vocabulary is an ensemble of two actual models. We use the open source mega detector for detecting where in the image an animal, a person, or a vehicle is. And then we also train our own classifier to say which species it's in that bounding box. SpeciesNet works on camera trap images, but can be adapted for videos too. We open sourced the inference code earlier this year. It can recognize more than 2,000 different species globally, and also other animals at different taxonomic levels. So for example, we can say with less confidence that some things are birds and not know exactly what type of bird they are. We have carefully evaluated SpeciesNet on our own test sets, and we focused on precision. But in the end, we recommend everyone to never blindly trust the results from any AI model and run a test on your own data sets and see how well these type of models address your needs. As I said, this has been a collaborative effort over several years. Google provided the infrastructure, the resources, and the expertise to build the AI models. Wildlife Insights provided the data, and is the primary platform where we launched SpeciesNet. We published a peer-reviewed paper, and you can check it at that link in the presentation. We published the inference code on GitHub, and the model waits on Kaggle. And if you have large data sets to process, Wildlife Insights is our recommendation where to try the model. You can request an account at that website. You can upload the data to the cloud, and SpeciesNet will run on your images before you can review them. And our main goal in our partnership with Wildlife Insights was to maximize our impact. So far on the platform, there's been about 280 million images uploaded and processed through some version of SpeciesNet over time, 90 million of them containing animals. Researchers have been studied more than 4,000 species in their work, and that's almost double of what SpeciesNet can actually detect at the moment. But for future trainings, we're considering expanding that to include even more species. SpeciesNet was implicitly used by 1,600 organizations and in more than 100 countries, and touching more than 1,500 protected areas with at least one camera deployment. But we realized that not all organizations can or want to upload their images to the cloud. For example, some may not have a reliable access to the cloud. Some may have privacy concerns, and that's why we open source the model, hopefully for even more impact. And SpeciesNet was already integrated in a couple of third-party tools, and feel free to pick your favorite if you are working with any of these. And if you know of any other integrations, we'd like to hear from you. We wanted to make it as easy as possible to run SpeciesNet on your own computer as well. If you are slightly familiar with Python, you can run the model on your CPU or GPU. All you need to do is prepare the input in our format. We basically just need your file paths. And optionally, you can also give us some location information for post-processing. And from the outputs, you can always use the predictions, the prediction score. But if you are looking for the individual results from the two underlying models, you can also use the classifications and detections to look at them separately. We also offer different ways of running the model as well, like you can run on your entire folder and not have to prepare the input in this format specifically. By default, the classifier runs on the most confident bounding box coming from the detector. But we also have slightly undocumented ways to run the model on all bounding boxes, if that's something of interest to you. For example, researchers that have multiple species in the same image, they may want to run the model on more bounding boxes. And we provide a few more tricks here. We know that the community would also sometimes need to fine-tune the model, and we'll make some recommendations soon how to do that. We are aware that some people from the community already had success with that. And we want to make it easy for you to understand some of the biases that the model may have. So we release some stats on the data that we trained, validated, and tested our model on. We also released data on the label distribution, so you can understand if your species is well supported in our training. As I mentioned, what we call SpeciesNet is actually a combination of two models. Megadetector was used to detect where in the image an animal is, and the classifier is used to predict what species that is. And we combine the two model predictions in some complex ways, and I will talk a bit more about that in the future slides. So far, I've talked about one SpeciesNet classifier, but we actually trained and released two different models. We use the same recipe, but we train one model on the full size images and one model on the cropped images that are using the most confident bounding box from Megadetector. And we match the ground truth annotations, so the labels that we get from the scientists, to the most confident bounding box, which can be risky, can introduce some noises, but we have ways to deal with that. One interesting detail that we noticed our methods differ a bit from what others in the community have tried is that we also crop to a bounding box if, for example, the annotation says there's no animal. So essentially, we make the classifier recognize blank bounding boxes as well. But if you feel that the full size classifier works better for you, through the same code, you can run it on your own data. In practice, the picture is a bit more complicated. The classifier is not trained on the original images directly, but we apply some fairly heavy augmentations first. And here you can see some of those augmentations. They can distort the images quite a lot. And the AI models actually benefit from seeing more diversity, and they use this sort of trick to become more robust to data variation. We have, as I said, a fairly complex logic in place for combining the predictions coming from the two models. Just a bit of context, the labels have been derived from the hierarchical taxonomy. So we have a class, an order, a family, a genus, a species for each animal. And we are generally looking for an agreement or a disagreement between the two models, the detector and the classifier. We prefer to treat lower confidence results as unknown. And we're just inviting the user to take a closer look at some of those images. So our focus is generally for precision on blanks or species. And it's much better in our experience to have the user trust those high confidence results and look at a bit more images for review, rather than just give them one single accuracy number that may or may not work in their use case. We do some other tricks as well. For example, we have a roll-up process that we introduced. So for example, if you predict that in an image you have a lion with 0.5 confidence and a leopard with 0.3 confidence, that's not enough to say for sure what it is. But if you combine those in their common ancestor, you know that it's an animal from the Panthera genus with 0.8 confidence. We also geofence the results when we have location information available. So if you get a lion prediction in the US, by default, we roll up to the first genus or family or order that we know it's actually present in that country. This was the most technical part of my presentation. Generally, I guess building good classifiers is hard. And the difference between building an okay classifier and a good one maybe just to pay close attention to the data that we have and just try to remove the noise as much as you can, given, I guess, the limited amount of time you want to invest into this. So here are some ideas that we had to come up with because we decided to never blindly trust our initial annotations. So, for example, if you ever decide to build your own classifier, it's good to know that some labels are not relevant for your problem. In this case, for example, we have fire or snow conditions that were not relevant for the detection that we wanted to have. So in our case, we removed those. You could very well decide to rewrite those labels as just being blanks. There's no animal present. There are also situations where, for example, in the same data set, the same label was used for different species. So all of these were labeled animal, but we didn't want to make the classifier's job too hard in training. So again, like we decided to remove some of these images. And also for evaluation, that's important because you don't want to give it a bad score for predicting at species level, for example. It's clearly in all of these images what the animal actually is. There may be issues coming from the pre-processing across different stages in your pipeline. We had this issue, for example, with zebras that didn't have the exact species and ended up with the family level label. And again, it was an easy fix because it was consistent across the entire data set. You may have multiple labels per image, and that can be confusing to a classifier. For example, this was invalidating our assumption that the same level applies to all bounding boxes. So again, we decided to remove some of this data. In a visual sense, this type of images where animal carcasses were used as bait contain an animal, but the label said otherwise. All of these were labeled as blanks. And again, this would confuse any classifier that you train. Since this was happening only in some individual projects, again, we decided to remove some of these. Decoys have a similar problem. The label said these are blanks, which was not true. We removed them as well. Some people blurred images prior to uploading to Wildlife Insights. Again, this was introducing noise. It was easy to detect, and again, we did some cleanup. And then I guess you are free to use any other existing model to clean up your data. For example, we used megadetector in pre-processing as well to find inconsistencies between what the label says and what megadetector was finding that's not matching the label. So here the label was saying there's an animal, but megadetector detected humans or vehicles. Easy to clean, but it takes a bit of practice to decide to implement an workflow that's going to clean some of these things. Again, here, megadetector didn't find anything. The label said there's an animal. Or the megadetector detected an animal, but the label said it's a human. So you can apply all these sorts of tricks to clean up your data. And there's always a possibility that you're going to bias the data in some way or another. You also have the option to always evaluate on the original data set as well. In our paper and in our evaluations, cleaning everything with some of these heuristics actually helped a lot. So more ideas that you can try to fix, but I think you get a sense that paying close attention to your data actually helps in practice to build a better classifier and better models in general. Here are my details if you want to get in touch. And we can't wait to hear what you use SpeciesNet for.
Thank you so much, Stefan. That was really, really interesting. And yeah, thank you for sharing. There's a couple of questions in the chat, and I just wanted to direct you over to that. So Kim asks, Kim, would you like to unmute and ask your question live?
Yeah, sure. Hang on a minute. Yes, actually, I think I probably came to the same answer already. Discovering it was EfficientNet version 2 as the classifier, I would expect that to be fully documented on how to train classifiers. Essentially, training of a classifier from Google's EfficientNet interests me as well. Yeah, so I might try that at some stage. Is that correct, by the way? How to train is... Yeah, sorry.
So the train was done on Google infrastructure. We didn't open source that because it doesn't make sense for a community to reproduce the same workflow. But the same, like if you study the paper, the same models are available publicly. You just have to prepare the data and train your own classifier in that sense. I think one useful framework that people try is TIM, the PyTorch image models, and has an EfficientNet version there as well. It's a very hard problem because in general, very few people would have access to so much data as it's already in Wildlife Insights. Yeah. We eventually are going to say it's much better to fine tune on your own data.
Yeah, I'm not actually looking to reproduce what you guys are doing. I was more thinking in terms of training a classifier on thermal images, and I don't expect you to have a lot of thermal images in your data training. So in that respect, there's new work I expect.
Yeah, like I think everyone has a preference in the end of like what they want to try.
Right.
It's more that if you want to quickly get up to speed and run something, then we put a full solution together.
Someone suggests, oh, sorry to interrupt. So someone did suggest that you could potentially fine tune by adding thermal images to a visual image trained model. A, do you think that's a good idea? And B, is the model that you've produced released in a manner that it can allow you to take it as a base and then further fine tune it?
That's what I mentioned about fine tuning.
Okay.
Like we will recommend people to do some sort of that. Basically, you're taking the model, you're just removing the final layer or a few layers at the end, and you're benefiting from all the knowledge that was ingested or learned inside the middle layers from seeing so much camera trap data. But then you want to put a new layer that you can train on your domain, for example, thermal images. So yes, and that's been used in other types of signals as well, in bioacoustics, in everywhere else where people have their own distribution of data or like different modalities, and they still want to benefit from a model that's been trained on a much larger corpus. So yes,
Okay, so you actually add a new layer to the model then to do that, do you?
You remove, let's say, the final layer of the model, and you add your own layer that you're gonna train, and you keep everything else inside the model fixed. You're not gonna change that because it's been trained on a much more diverse data set.
Okay, thank you very much.
Fantastic. I think we've got a couple more minutes, and I see there's another question from Riley in the chat. Riley, would you like to? No pressure. Oh, I don't know if I think your mic might not be working, but it sounds like you're saying, please, no, I don't want to. Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions for Stefan before we close off the main part of the call? Yes, that was going to be my prompt. Stefan is just to post links. Thank you so much for sharing your slides as well. Yeah, for those of you that haven't seen, Stefan's just posted a link to his slides, to his LinkedIn, and also in an email address as well. So thank you very much. And we've got another question from Dorothy. How do you handle seasonal changes and camouflage?
I'm assuming seasonal changes in terms of the animal changing their appearance. The more diverse data you show to the classifier, the better it's gonna become. We didn't specifically evaluate on different seasons, but we do have a lot of data for animals that change for. So we hope that's captured, but that's how you handle it generally. And camouflage, the augmentations, basically the variation in images that you introduce artificially, can help with that. And also just showing the model in training images from sequences where, for example, the animal moves, and sometimes you see the whole animal, sometimes you see vegetation. That helps the model to learn to be better at camouflage.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. I think we've now hit the hour, so I think this makes the end of our the main part of the call. Thank you so much, Stefan, Andy, Laura, Sarah, for your fantastic talks. It was great to see all the engagement. And yeah, just thank you so much for joining and sharing your resources in the chat. Please, everyone, take notes of the various emails and links that have been placed in the chat, and you can save them. But that's it. Thank you so much for joining our November Variety Hour. This is unfortunately the last one we're doing this year, but we will be back up and running again in January 2026. So see you again in the new year. Thank you very much, everyone.